Thank you all for joining and welcome to the Asbmr Pulse Check webinar. Today, we're going to be figuratively checking the pulse of Asbmr's membership in respects to the Society's diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. So just some guidelines for today's webinar. Please remember that this is a safe environment and to listen respectfully to one another's views and commit to listening and learning. And please note that all participants will be on mute upon entry to the meeting. And if you've unmuted yourself, please remain on mute and save any questions or comments for the end of the webinar, as there will be an opportunity for open discussion at that time. So today we will be reviewing Asbmr's current membership demographics, some current and future DEI specific initiatives from Asbmr, and then finally, like I said, we'll open up for feedback and discussion from the audience. So just for some background, I'd like to begin by noting that Asbmr follows the governing criteria as defined by the National Institutes of Health, that the following racial and ethnic groups have been shown to be underrepresented in biomedical research. And those include Blacks or African Americans, Hispanics or Latinos, Native Americans, and Pacific Islanders. And in addition to these, we do recognize as an international society that underrepresentation can vary from setting to setting. So it's true that Asbmr does have low representation from underrepresented minority scientists at just about 1% of our total membership. However, this is an overarching deficit within the entire STEM field. The NIH has stated that improving diversity in biomedical research is crucial. However, URMs make up only 2% of new tenure track and tenured faculty at medical schools, despite receiving 13% of PhDs in these fields. These numbers have also virtually unchanged from those reported in 1980. URMs also spend more time in lower academic ranks, are promoted at lower rates, are paid less compared with other similar positions, are less likely to hold senior faculty and administrative positions, and receive less than 5% of total NIH R01 awards. So while it appears that Asbmr does fall in line with the field's diversity deficit, as a society, we want to lead by example, not fall within the average. So with this knowledge of the overarching lack of diversity within our field, let's move forward and take a look at the demographic makeup of Asbmr's membership over the past 2 years. So before getting into this, I would like to address that although race and ethnicity have always been included as information we gather as a part of an Asbmr member profile, it is a required field, and on average, on average 41.2% of members opt out of completing that field on their member profile. So the percentages you see on the screen are based off of our 2020 year-end membership total of 3,158 members. And for our 2020 ethnicity data, only 5.1% of members self-identified as Hispanic or Latino, and 41.7% identified as non-Hispanic, non-Latino, with the remainder either not answering or selecting non-applicable. So moving on to our 2020 race data, we can see that 0.06% identified as American Indian or Alaskan Native, just under 1% of members identified as Black or African American, and 0.09% identified as Native Hawaiian or Pacific Islander. The highest percentage of members here identified as white at 37%, and then 19.3% of members identified as Asian. So now we're gonna quickly review our 2020 annual meeting registrant demographics. And as a part of Asbmr's increased DEI efforts, race and ethnicity data has been collected as a part of the annual meeting registration form. So for the 2021 annual meeting, we had a total of 3,248 registrants. 52% of those were members, 19% were non-members, and the remaining 29% fell into our other registration categories. So here you can see that 11.73% of meeting registrants identified their ethnicity as being Hispanic or Latino, and that's compared to only 5.1% from our membership list who identified this way in 2020. Other increased areas include 0.12% of registrants identifying their race as American Indian or Alaskan Native, 1.29% identifying as Black or African American, and then the percentage of Native Hawaiian or Pacific Islander remained the same at 0.09%. And then you can see as well that a significant number of the registrants identified as either white or Asian compared to our other races. So here you have a visual of those numbers, and we did note that the number of our URM meeting registrants was slightly increased over those of our 2020 membership numbers, but unfortunately, based off of this list, what we don't know is the breakdown of these meeting registrants being members versus non-members. So now, looking back to 2019, the number of members who identified as Hispanic or Latino was lower than in 2020 at only 2.2%. And then 37.2% identified as non-Hispanic, non-Latino, with the remainder not indicating an ethnicity. So here we have our race demographics for 2019, and there were no real noteworthy changes in the way that our members self-identified their race in 2019 compared to 2020. So what I'd like to cover here is that 2019 was the year that ASBmr really began deliberately collecting race and ethnicity demographic information and pulling that data from our annual membership report. So we unfortunately don't have really strong demographic data as a breakdown of our total membership prior to the year 2019. So we do have the high level demographic information that we just reviewed for 2019 and 2020. And then moving forward as a part of our DEI initiatives, ASBmr will make a more conscious effort and have more accurate and distinguishable data here. So now that we've reviewed kind of what our membership breakdown has looked like over the past 2 years, I'd like to direct our focus on the actions that ASBmr has already taken to improve the Society's DEI efforts. So in early 2020, the Society formalized the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee as a full standing committee, which had previously functioned as the Diversity Subcommittee under the Membership Engagement Committee, and the vote to upgrade that to a full standing committee was unanimously approved by the ASBmr Council. So a couple other initiatives that ASBmr has taken in 2020 include 2 member listening sessions that we held in June to discuss systemic racism. And we just provided a platform for those hard conversations and to lift a collective voice against social injustice and racism. We also compiled anti-racism resources for our members, which are still available on the ASBmr website. In September of 2020, we adopted a diversity and inclusion statement of principles, which publicly states ASBmr's stance on condemning racism, discrimination, and harassment in all forms, and commits to providing a safe and inclusive environment for all ASBmr members. We also implemented a member spotlight series to provide a platform for underrepresented minority members to present their research. And lastly, we held a session at the 2020 annual meeting called Charting Our Course for Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, a call to action for ASBmr members, which opened up conversation about the DEI related actions that ASBmr had taken up to that point. So I'd also like to review some of the current opportunities offered by ASBMR in terms of funding and award opportunities. We have the Diversity and Emerging Country Travel Grants, which were implemented in 2017 to assist with travel to the annual meeting. We have our Diversity Poster Competition, which has been awarded to top scoring poster presenters at each ASBMR annual meeting since 2016. We have the ASBMR NMRI Travel Grant, which funds a young investigator to attend the NMRI annual workshop. And then we have the Phoebe LaBoy Professional Development Award, which provides funding for a female residing in an emerging or developing country to attend the ASBMR annual meeting. And applications for the 2021 Phoebe LaBoy Award are actually currently open, and the deadline to apply will be March 19th with more information on our website. I do want to take an opportunity to highlight a new opportunity, brand new for 2021, which is the ASBMR Underrepresented Minority Mentorship Award Program, implemented by the DEI committee this year. The program aims to increase networking and mentorship opportunities, as well as increase active participation and representation from individuals identifying as Urms at the ASBMR annual meeting. So up to 10 selected applicants will receive $1,000 each in funding to help offset costs associated with traveling to the annual meeting. And then they will also receive one-on-one mentorship with an ASBMR senior investigator. Applications are also currently open for this award program with the same deadline to apply of March 19th. So ASBMR does plan to continue with the initiatives that we have already reviewed, but I'd also like to take a bit of time to touch on some additional plans for 2021 and beyond. The DEI committee will be sponsoring a session at the 2021 annual meeting this year that will highlight the research of URM members who have made significant contributions to our field. And then there will also be a session on racial disparities in science at the 2021 annual meeting. And then finally, ASBMR leadership has been committed to incorporating DEI goals into our strategic plan, and we will review those goals now. So here you see a visual of the ASBMR 2019 to 2022 strategic plan, and noted throughout this entire commentary, I think we all know that diversity in science is crucial, but just hoping to increase diversity in numbers without a real genuine commitment to a strategic plan that involves inclusion is rather pointless. So here, what we'll do is break down where in the strategic plan DEI goals have been included and implemented within the past year. So the first facet of our strategic plan is closing the treatment gap in osteoporosis. And here, the DEI initiative is that ASBMR has implemented a task force on clinical algorithms for fracture risk that is charged with reviewing the latest evidence to determine if current approaches on distinguishing fracture risk based on race and ethnicity are necessary and valid. The next facet of the ASBMR strategic plan is to lead the research agenda in musculoskeletal science. And here, the specific charges that have been added to the ASBMR task force on clinical algorithms for fracture risk are to identify key questions and research gaps that need to be addressed, recommend a research agenda to better understand and define long-term requirements for accessing bone fracture risk based on race and ethnicity, and establish a framework for longitudinal assessment of the validity of race and ethnicity in clinical algorithms. And then the last facet of the strategic plan is one global ASBMR family, increase membership, outreach, engagement, and benefits. And the many DEI initiatives that have been included here include increasing the diversity of presenters for both year-round virtual education programming and annual meeting programming, increase the diversity of award nominees and recipients, implement a member code of conduct, which is currently in draft, implement the previously discussed ASBMR URM mentorship awards. And then we plan to perform a survey or focus group of our URM members to determine how the society may better engage this community. And then finally, under one global ASBMR family, we plan to expand year-round educational offerings to deliver meaningful content to members, which include continuing our member spotlight series, as well as additional DEI programming. So at this point, I'd like to open up the conversation to the audience and begin with posing the question, how can ASBMR continue to work to create a more inclusive environment for both current and future diverse members? And I will stop my share screen so we can all see each other.
Before we get into the conversation, I just wanted to mention about the URM mentorship program, which is centered around the annual conference. So the call for applications has already gone out. So if you know some underrepresented individuals who fit the categories who could apply for these awards, please encourage them to do so. Also, there will be a call for mentors. So we're looking for mentors to serve in this capacity as well. And so if you're interested in being mentor, or you know a colleague who would be interested in mentoring, please sign up when the time comes for that as well. So the commitment for the mentors would be, like I said, the program centers around the annual conference. And so the commitment for the mentor would be just to engage with the mentee or the applicant. By that, we mean meet with the individual one time outside of the conference for lunch or just a casual meeting, attend the award recipient's presentation, and also attend the diversity reception. So that would be the commitment from the mentor. And basically what we want from the mentor is just to provide career advice, advice on presentations, advice on how to get grants or how to navigate their graduate programs. So just general mentorship is what we're asking from these individuals.
I guess
what is the plan for increasing representation of URMs on ASBMR Council? And that's a great question. And that is something that has been included in the strategic plan to increase diversity of our leadership. So I can tell you that when we do receive our nomination applications and nominations from other individuals, we do make a conscious effort to make sure that the slate of nominees for each of those open positions is a diverse slate. And we've always made a conscious effort, but it's definitely become more, upfront now that, both diversity in gender, demographic, whether someone's from the US or international, as well as race and ethnicity.
So one thing about that, so as you saw from our slides, we have about 1% URM in the society. So if someone is interested in a volunteer position, like we're not in a position to be shy, and we really have to step forward and kind of nominate ourselves and kind of push for ourselves because we're at 1%. And so if you're interested in serving, please, contact Lauren and she can give you details on how to apply for the different positions.
Exactly. And I should have introduced you, Rhonda, prior to this. For those of you who don't know, Rhonda Prisby is our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee Chair. And one of the charges of our committee is to have our committee members, spread the word and help recommend individuals who are URMs or diverse individuals to apply and really encourage those people to nominate themselves and help spread the word. So that is one of the charges of our committee.
So this is Marsha Hurley. I just wanted to go back to the question about the pool. And one of the things that we talked about, I think it was last year or the year before, was the fact that, you know, as a society, we are not utilizing all of the mechanisms that are available from NIH to help us to begin to identify and prepare potential bone research investigators. And I mean, you know, not almost, everyone who has an NIH-funded research grant with at least 2 years left on the grant can apply for a diversity supplement, which is a no-brainer. And that supplement can be utilized to support a high school student, a college student, a medical student, a postdoc student. So, you know, this is a way to at least begin to increase the interest of students and to begin to build a pool. Another thing that I have noted is that I have been mentoring a minority individual who just received a K award, and another individual who is now in medical school came to me, African American, came to me as a following 4 years of college, and you know, I received a postdoc minority supplement to my R01. He's now in medical school. He was selected after 9 months to make an oral presentation at Asbmr last year. And he's coming into the lab between when he has vacation and when he has time on a Saturday. So I think that that's something that, and honestly, I think a lot of our members are probably not aware about this. I think Dr. Prisby, last year, or not last year, because we didn't have anything in person last year, but 2 years ago, we invited, she invited someone from the network of minority investigators to come and speak about the initiatives that NIDDK has. And there may be other, I don't know what NIMS is doing, but NIDDK is a model for diversity outreach activities. And so, you know, I think that those are just some concrete things that we should be thinking about, and whether or not there should be a particular, you know, a webinar or something to allow everyone to be more aware of these opportunities. Those are just some thoughts that I had. And the other thing is, before I shut up, is that one of the reasons I think we're losing so many of the individuals who've gotten a PhD is that, quite frankly, they're not, for the most part, getting the kind of a support that they need to be able to write an R01, and even some of the training grants that they should be applying for before you get to applying for an R01. You know, it's very, very difficult. And I like to point out Larry Royce, who was my mentor and one of the founders of this society. I started out with a 2-year minority supplement to Larry's, you know, program project grant. And I wrote my first R01 and got it on the first try. Now, trust me, that has never happened since. But, you know, that was really an ego booster. and so I guess because I've had such great luck with those postdoc and diversity supplements, I think we really are missing an opportunity. So I'm going to stop there.
Yes, those are good points, Marge, and I remember you brought that up at a previous meeting. I will say that we did have initial conversations with individuals at the NIDDK, and it kind of fell through the cracks when COVID hit. But we'll certainly follow up with that, because those are good points. And one thing that we should probably note for the people in attendance today is that you do not have to be an underrepresented person. If you have an R01, you can get one of those supplements.
Oh yeah, anybody can get those supplements. Yeah, I didn't mean to imply that you had to be, you know, an underrepresented, or else there wouldn't be too many of those being given out. Yeah.
I think, Marja, it's great that you're bringing up kind of these pipeline issues. And I think many of us in the field have T32 training grants, and you have to have, you know, diversity and inclusion components there. And, you know, it can be a struggle because it seems like we have very few applicants. So, you know, if the society can help more, I think, in trying to disseminate ideas and what has been successful in some places to help with outreach and maybe, you know, reaching more into the undergraduate and earlier pool, because, you know, if people don't apply to the graduate school, you can't fund them. You know, I think that would really be great. And, you know, if there are things that, if you're applying for a T32, you can kind of plug into to say, we know that there's a, you know, through our relevant society, something that will help us to get the word out. I think that would be really great for the field as a whole.
I mean, I think if everyone just looked at their local colleges and universities that are close to their academic health centers, and, you know, perhaps start a small program, say, okay, you know, and talk to the dean and whomever makes these decisions, that for our T32, we really need to show that we are doing something, and you know, develop opportunities for summer experiences for some of these students who are who may be thinking about going on to graduate school. But obviously, when you look at the students who are being accepted into graduate programs, you know, they're looking at how much experience they've had conducting research while they were in college. So it's a vicious circle if you're not having that kind of exposure. Yeah.
One thing I'll mention to kind of follow up on that is there are several institutions across the country that have summer scholarship programs. The McNair Scholarship Program is one of those, and it's specifically for underrepresented people as well as first generation college students. So if you fit into that category, you can apply to be a summer scholar under the McNair's program. And it is designed for undergraduates. So this would be one way, and this is probably an existing mechanism at many institutions where we can start to pull people in the pipeline through programs like that. Another thing is, and I know it's not related to ASBMR, but the American Physiological Society has summer programs. And even though you think, well, I'm in bone biology, and so I would not be able to apply for one of those, I've known individuals from the ASBMR who have gotten fellowships and summer program scholarships for students in their lab, even though they're doing bone biology work. So if you do some type of molecular and cellular work, you may be able to qualify for those programs as well.
So Ron, is it possible to develop a resource, you know, document or something on the website that would allow researchers to know about these opportunities? You know, click on, see what's available, and that would perhaps be very helpful. Sorry, Bapatunda.
Yes, we're just going to talk about a couple of things. The first one is that there is this annual conference. I'm sure most of you probably heard about it, ABRA camps. And I think that ASBMR should have a presence at ABRA camps. Several of the societies show up at ABRA camps every year, and it's a good place to recruit, to get people interested in bone and mineral research fairly early, to get them thinking about things like that. So that's one thing. The other one is that, you know, we have a lot of underrepresented minorities that are getting PhDs, and some of them are getting into academia, but we're losing them somewhere along the line. Like Marja, I was very fortunate. I got a research supplement to my mentor's program project grant, Greg Mundy, at that time, and that's how that started me up. And GMS, which actually is mandated to kind of like look at these things on a broader basis, came out with some new mechanisms recently. One is a K99R00 called the Mosaic that is specifically targeted at underrepresented minorities. And I think that ASBMR needs to publicize this so that those in our field that are eligible for these are aware of this. And by the way, as you know, GMS can fund irrespective of the research area. This particular Mosaic mechanism, which again, it's a K99R00, but it's not the parent K99R00, is targeted specifically at underrepresented minorities. We should take advantage of that. The other one is that there's a companion mechanism to that GMS offers actually for societies, for professional societies to apply for. It's a research education award. I just posted the FOA in the chat. And I think that this is something that should be brought to the attention of the leadership of ASBMR, because there's no reason why these mechanisms that are NIH funded that we're not taking advantage of them to the fullest extent. So I'll just stop there and let other people.
Thank you for sharing that. Would you mind putting the name of the first conference that you mentioned in the chat so that we can reference that later as well?
I agree completely. There should be a resource through the ASBMR that you can look for programs. We have lots of programs here. Outcome actually meeting happened here in Indianapolis a couple of years ago, and I was there as part of the musculoskeletal center. So it's a great place because they have college students looking for places to do graduate school. I want to go back to a question from Catherine before about the people that put non-applied or they cannot classify themselves into anything. A lot of the things that are there are very US centered. So people from other countries, they don't know exactly where to meet. And a lot of the discussion we were just having is US centered also because we are talking about NIH grants. So I think that that needs to be expanded. Maybe, I don't know how to clarify to people. At some point when I was in the diversity subcommittee, we look at the people that was indicated or with indicated SEMS a certain population, and people from France were calling them Hispanic Latinos because they don't have a clear idea what a Latino means in the US. So those things can be confusing. And I don't know if that could change the proportion of people. The other thing I would say that thanks to the ASBMR being virtual last year, it helped a lot of people to be able to attend, just by being a member from abroad. So I know from Argentina in particular, people that, or Chile, that were not able to attend because they cannot, they don't have the money for the travel and hotels and everything. They could attend. So having a part of the meeting, even if it goes in person, having it virtual will help with diversity. And there was something else I wanted to say. Oh, for the new program for the mentorship, Rhonda was wondering if you were thinking about matching people from particular countries with the mentees, because they have different mechanisms for promotion, for to get grants, different possibilities, and it may be somebody from the US can have a general idea of how to get a grant, but not with particulars for each country.
That's a good point. We hadn't considered that. What we were planning on doing is having a list of mentees or mentors that the mentees can choose from. And so perhaps in that way they can kind of self-select according to country if need be. But that's a good point, Lillian. We hadn't considered that. But to answer Katie's question, you can be a non-URM and still serve as a mentor. You just need to sign up.
Rhonda, does this committee also deal with women interests or only underrepresented minorities?
Yeah, there's a separate women's committee.
Yeah, we do have a women a Women in Bone and Mineral Research Committee, but you know, a lot of the charges of the two committees do overlap.
I don't remember ever being invited to a discussion about women's interests by that committee like this.
Right. The Women's Committee does typically have, you know, sessions at the annual meeting, but as far as like a kind of pulse check of the state of the society in terms of the Women's Committee, we have not done that.
That might be welcome.
Just a quick comment about kind of going off of what Kay had mentioned about ABRCAMs and, you know, trying to have a presence at some of these other recruitment events. It may be worth trying to feel out whether there are people already members in ASBMR who attend these conferences already. I know of people, so like Julie Sterling Rhodes, for example, she's pretty involved in our IMSD at Vanderbilt, which is the Initiative for Maximizing Student Diversity. Vanderbilt actually has, I think, possibly the largest IMSD program in the country. And so we have a lot of kind of ties to some of these recruitment conferences, and some of our faculty will go and our students will go, and so there may actually be some overlap from some of our bone folks who already attend some of those and could perhaps maybe go as representatives of ASBMR and have some sort of booth or something, you know, to really try and establish that presence. But I'm just wondering if we may be able to even capitalize on some of the people who already are involved in some of those initiatives.
Yeah, that's a great point. And we have, you know, made an effort in the past to have a presence at some international societies conferences. And I think this is definitely something that we can pass along to our ambassadors committee, and see what we can work with. I personally have not heard of this conference, so I'm glad that it was brought up on today's meeting.
Yeah, just to follow up on Rachel's point, I've been mentioning this. ABRCAMS is the largest, research opportunity for underrepresented college students, and it's interesting. From UConn, we send a representative to ABRCAMS to talk about our PhD programs. But again, if there are individuals from the different universities or academic health centers going to these conferences, I think it would be great to have a booth for ASBMR, but another mechanism would be to have information about research opportunities. You know, if you can't have a booth, which I think we should try to do, but if not, at least have, find out who in your institution is attending and ask whether or not they would be willing to, have flyers or whatever at their booth, so that individuals would be aware of these opportunities.
We can certainly do that. I mean, I go to ABRCAMS every year, so I'd be happy if there was something like that. I'd be happy to either spend some time at the booth, if that's the decision, or maybe to just have some flyers that I can also display at our institution's booth, because we go to ABRCAMS every year as well.
Okay, so are there any other ideas, maybe along the lines of what we've been discussing, or something completely different?
Is the committee still supporting one URM student to go to the NADDK meeting?
That's right, isn't that, Lauren? That was on the slide, I think.
Yes, we do support someone for the NMRI.
NAMRI, yeah. I happen to be the chair of the oversight board of NAMRI. Obviously, we're not having an in-person meeting. We're having a virtual meeting, So individuals would not be attending in person this year. I believe Winnie Martinez communicated that to someone at ASBMR, I believe. Yeah.
I just included in the chat a few programs that I know that we have here. These are some of summer programs, some are during the year for URMs. And in particular, the last one, the one from APSA, we have to do it all virtual last summer, but I had a student from Philadelphia that was doing some microcity analysis from home through this program. And I thought it was pretty nice. So that's another one that ASBMR may be able to get some interaction with.
Yeah. I think we've talked about a lot of things. I think a resource center on our website somewhere, and quite frankly, a webinar to alert our investigators about these supplemental opportunities to their R01s, which I don't want to call them no-brainers, but they're really quite close to being no-brainers. If someone is interested.
I mean, in fact, they can also get supplements to program project grants or to P30 center grants.
Sure.
So there's plenty of opportunities all around.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And again, another limitation of that is that the candidate has to be a permanent resident or a US citizen to be eligible for those programs. So it's, again, US.
Yeah, that's true. Yes, that's true. Yeah.
Well, Lillian, are you aware of any other mechanisms that might apply for international students or trainees?
Yes, because the DoD, for example, has predoctoral fellowships and postdoctoral fellowships that are not nationality restricted. And we've had some success at our institution. Unlike NIH, for some reason, they're not nationality restricted. We've had international students get these awards. So they're just like NIH fellowships, like NRSAs. So there's that. And there's a lot of foundations that have fellowships that people in the bone and mineral research field can apply for. I mean, earlier in my career, when I was a postdoc, I had applied to the International Myeloma Foundation and the Multiple Myeloma Research Foundation that fund cancer-induced bone disease research. So it's just trying to be creative. I think what Marja said is really important, that we find a way to create a resource page where we can put those things that trainees have access to them and they can go look at them, and if they're eligible for things, and then they can apply for those. But there are lots of opportunities, and I think if we all put our heads together, we can come up with a list of things that our trainees are able to apply for, or maybe even our mentors are able to apply for on behalf of their trainees.
Mm-hmm. Yes, those are good. Both of those are good points. The webinar as well as the resource page probably should be at the top of the list of things that we try to accomplish. So Rochelle made a comment in the chat. She said she believes the K99 R00 award is not restricted to US citizenship. I don't know if that's the case, but she thinks it is not. But that's something we can look into.
Just correct. Yeah.
Okay. So are there any other suggestions or comments? We can open up the floor to anything.
Yeah, I actually just wanted to compliment Rhonda and ASBMR. I think you guys have done a tremendous job in a year in putting a lot of this together. And I just think that needs to be said. For somebody who's been a part of ASBMR for longer than I care to remember. No, I don't. I love being a part of ASBMR. I think this is really great.
Thanks, Marja. I appreciate that. So, I mean, we want to keep the momentum going. We want to try to improve the numbers. I mean, hovering at 1% is just not acceptable. And so any ideas that you guys may have, we're willing to listen to them and implement them if possible, so that we can try to make some changes.
Yeah, just in agreement. I mean, thank you. We've gotten a ton of great suggestions already, and there's still comments coming into the chat. So, you know, Rhonda and I we'll take that back to the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Committee and get working on trying to implement some of these ideas. And just thank you all again for joining, for your ideas. And like Rhonda said, we're always open ears. You can always contact either Rhonda or myself or the Asbmr general inbox, and they'll know who to forward it along to. So just many thanks to you guys.
Yeah, and you don't have to wait for a session. You know, if you have an idea, you can send an email and and let us know. And I would encourage everybody to kind of be proactive within themselves. Like, you don't have to wait for the DEI committee to recruit people. You can go to your campus and you can look for underrepresented individuals and encourage them to get into science. That's what happened to me. I was not really looking to go into research, and I was encouraged by someone who just picked me out and said, do you want to be involved with helping me collect data? And this is how I got down the road to science. And so everybody has the potential to do that. Just seek people out at your university and ask them if they want to volunteer in your lab. Most of the time, students will be willing to volunteer in your lab without pay. If they know that they can get a meaningful experience out of it, they will come. So I would encourage everybody to do that.
And also, sorry, some courses, they can get credit. So it's not just they work for free, they will work for school credit or capstone projects.
Yes.
And that bringing one student to your lab will make more students to come in the future, because they will talk to each other and they will recruit more.
Yep.
Okay.
Well, if there are no more questions or comments, I'll give you guys 10 minutes back to your day. And just, again, thank you all for joining and for your ideas. And we hope to hear from you guys soon with even more ideas.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for attending.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Okay. All right, Lauren.
Bye.
I'll see you soon, Rhonda.
Okay.